Hey everybody, as an artist and creator in 2021, I believe that it's now easier than ever to get a job in the art industry. And so that's what I'm going to bring you in this video, because I understand there's probably a lot of you out there that don't understand the various ways and methods to go about getting a job. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing 8 of them. Now, just a brief overview of what I'm working on. I'm working on a bit of this little 3D kind of alien guy. I've been playing a lot of Returnal this summer, and I'm really digging it. So I'm trying my hand at kind of giving this little dude a bit of a paint job. So that's what you'll kind of be watching here on screen as I'm talking here. Now, for those of you that aren't aware, I'm like 90% like a 2D artist. I like to paint, and I'm kind of essentially here painting in 3D, which is really cool, right onto my sculpt. And I'm kind of at the stage where I'm either adding little bits to make him kind of glow and emit light, right, kind of like that, or maybe on certain other little nodes and parts of him like this. I'm kind of just feeling out the design as I work on them here. I was originally working, I built them in Adobe Medium. I sculpted them in there, and now I'm just kind of addressing all these little materials, adding wear and tear, and kind of figuring out a little bit of maybe perhaps some of his backstory. But yeah, very cool. So let's I'll get into this, and let's get back to the topic. So above all, before we can really even set out to get the art job, whatever that means, but let's define it for our circumstances today as an entertainment art field job. Like video game art, movie art, marketing art, poster art. Let's even say illustration, trading card game art. Let's define it within those parameters. Your art and your service is fairly consistent. This is essentially, again, you creating a backlog of work or some existing amount of work that you can prove not only to yourself, but to the industry you want to be in, that you can deliver consistently. That it just has to kind of be a given. For some people, that means, okay, I'm at this level, I'm good enough. I have this whole backlog of like work that I've just dumped and created for like 6 months. Now I can kind of maybe start doling out those posts, start uploading them to ArtStation, Instagram, starting Twitter feeds with them, right? Really get that snowball rolling. But right, you've already put in X amount of work, so you're able to do that pretty consistently. So I know in this video we're going to be talking about getting some jobs and some strategies for that. But what if you're not quite ready to go after that job? What if you're an artistic individual that just needs to strengthen your fundamentals? One thing that I recommend any of my students to do is to head over to Antonio Stepart's ArtWad program to check it out. It's super focused. It's not a bunch of mumbo jumbo on theory and elaborate kind of techniques and the history of it. No, it's very direct, very specific on, hey, this is a skill set. These are the exercises you can train that skill set, and this is how you can implement it in kind of career-oriented contexts. But what ArtWad does is set up a structure. Weekly assignments for both drawing and painting. Again, guys, what I like about this is that it's constantly varied and this very specific structure. So for someone like me that doesn't necessarily specialize in hard surface design or hard surface drawing, even one of my weaker sort of areas, I can go into a module here. Antonio breaks it down into like, okay, if you really want to like practice and warm up with some perspective, here's a very specific way to go about that. Here's how you can then learn about, breaking down very specific references, which he does provide a little bit of reference and inspiration, which is always fantastic. He shows how to analyze that, how to really take it apart and understand it. And then, of course, part 3 on a given kind of week will show how to implement all this information and knowledge. So it's really good for people that just are aimless at adding very specific structure to this. And of course, there's also a fantastic community where students can submit their assignments and get direct feedback from community support members. There's classroom sessions that he jumps on live and kind of gives longer demos and talks on all of this content. So if you're a particular student that needs vigorous sort of structure to improve a specific sort of skill set, I really can't think of too much of a better way for the affordable price that they offer. And again, you can always try this 7-day free trial for the drawing program if you want to get your feet wet and see what it's all about. So of course, the first and most basic way that you can apply to get the job, right, is simply apply. Every website, every big publisher, whether it's for, book covers, whether it's for trading art, whether it's for video game stuff, right? They have their own websites. They always will list, hey, we're seeking applicants, or we're seeking, recruitment in this certain area. We need to hire. And they'll be specific. You need these skills. This is remote. This is on site. And okay, here's the caveat, the one that always comes up. You need X amount of experience. You need to have worked on, 3 AAA games. That's mostly just to kind of scare off people that really aren't ready for the job. But from all the people I've spoke to and from my own experience, that really doesn't matter. If your work's good enough, it is good enough. Don't be afraid to apply. Just go for it. So, okay, where do you find these applications? Again, go to very specific sites of places you want to work for, right? Those very specific companies in those specific fields. So if you want to do Blizzard art, look in Activision's Blizzard web portals. They're out there. They list what they need and what their specific requirements are. If you want to do, book covers, look up sites like the HarperCollins publishing agency based out in New York. They're always looking for new talent, as well as like fantasy. There's things like Fantasy Flight on the low end. I really don't recommend too much of them. Of course, there's always Wizards of the Coast, which there's so much more to Wizards too than just Magic the Gathering. I have a lot of friends that are doing other projects for Wizard that have nothing to do with actual Magic itself. Again, it's a big enterprise. Look for these places where you feel your art naturally fits. Of course, that goes without say. So the next biggest thing, besides directly applying, is there's referrals, right? So this is a lot less of a guarantee, right? Because again, you're gonna have to know someone. But the best way to know someone is, of course, interact with people in social circles, and of course, network to the best of your ability. So how do you go about networking? Well, you have to show up, to conventions. That's probably the best way. Things are getting on track now, right? Again, in 2021, conventions are starting to happen again, which is great because that's, again, put your face to your art, get that both in front of the right people you need it to, and of course meet other, similarly skilled and of course mutually talented individuals that you can start to connect with. Even if you're both, let's say like you meet a friend. I'm going to go to this convention. I'm going to meet my friend Philip. All right. Hey, Philip. Right. And we talk, right? You're both in line, let's say hypothetically, for, a job interview or a portfolio review, at let's say DreamWorks. And let's say, okay, you both don't make it, right? Like, okay, you had your review. They say, hey, come back next year, work on this, this, and this. But right, you and Phil have now established a bit of a friendship. You go back, right? You connect on Instagram and Facebook, whatever your social things are. And a year passes and you've talked on and off a lot. Maybe you've done some art hangouts with your friend, and one of you kinds of makes it and one of you does not make it the following year. Well, you still have that friendship. Hopefully you'll still continue to grow it. And let's say Phil gets in and I don't. Okay, maybe 6 months passes. He knows an opening, maybe not even in his department, but a similar or adjacent one. And now that he knows you both weren't ready a year ago, or was it like 18 months ago, but now because you have a contact, someone that you've kind of grown and developed with a little bit, that's now you're in. That is by and far the most cases that I talk to, with individuals that are getting in a bit, company work, studio work. Hey, I was referred to somebody. And from my own experience, right, I had in some instances, a referral is so strong. They don't even give you they're not even gonna look at your body of work. I was already basically at interview 2 with this one job one time. They haven't even looked at my art. they were going off of the word of mouth of somebody else they knew that they trusted, that I was a good candidate for the job. And we'd already done, again, we were in the process of setting up an interview too. We're like, hey, why don't you send me your work? Let's see where you're a good fit and what you actually like. That finally had come, kind of come up. But that's how powerful they are. And this was an individual I hadn't spoke to or I haven't interacted with in years, but we had, a good bond, and we had developed a kind of good social standing together in the past. And you just never know when these things can come back and can kind of help you out to elevate and boost your career. So referrals, don't underestimate the power of them. And of course, that's going to require you to get out there, put yourself out there with your work, and be open to talking, of course, with other people, and of course, always receive constructive criticism, which is all probably topics I'm going to put in a future video, common mistakes junior artists make. So be on the lookout for that. And then I'm going to bunch up kind of points 3 and 4 together here. There are talent scouts and recruiters. There's not too much of a difference, but like, again, from my experience, like when I was talking with recruiters with Activision, right, they mostly had found and saw my work through LinkedIn, right? We were talking, but like that's all this guy's job was. Like he was literally a dude that talks to artists like me and finds placement. Like what is the best job? What is the best studio for you? Because again, Activision is a very big like kind of publishing entity, right? So this guy in particular was assigned to 5 separate little studios. So he's like going back and forth in between all the studios, right? He knows what their jobs are, what they're looking for, who they already have on their roster, and he's specifically kind of headhunting for very specific tasks in them, right? So like, okay, we talked to me. He's like, obviously you're not the best fit for something like Call of Duty. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't. I have no interest in drawing modern weaponry and armor suits for military soldiers all day long, right? So yeah, you're probably not the best, but I have this small studio over here. I think you'd be a good fit. So again, he'll put you through his certain web portals. You make your accounts on their site. You have your information in their system, and then right as soon as the next available thing comes up, right, you're gonna be on the top of the call list. So you're ready to go. So right, recruiters are they're defined positions. They're specifically looking. They have a very specific, parameters they're looking for art with. Now, let's say talent scouts is a little bit more of a casual, role. So in my more recent interaction, right, there was a senior artist, an existing senior artist working with Epic Games, right? I believe he specifically was on the Fortnite team, and he was just on ArtStation browsing through things, looking for just potentially like really good artists that fit with their brand and with their style. He didn't have nearly as specific of an agenda or kind of goals from my understanding, and he just happened to see my work, right? So he contacted me, shot me a message, and we just kind of that led to the series of kind of meetings and stuff that would go from there. And right, that's not his job. His job isn't to scout or even to recruit. But again, as a senior artist on an art team, he has an eye and he knows the material. So like, of course, maybe his superior, and again, I'm hypothetically kind of assuming some of this. So like, hey, look, if you ever, if you're out in the wild, you're on an art site like ArtStation, you happen to see someone that you think is really good at what we kind of do here, set up a little session, see if they have any interest in it, and then we'll kind of progress from there. So right, there's so many different variables. There's so many different ways to get an in on a studio. But again, none of this really works if your art isn't doing its job, which is just being good, which is being marketable. There has to be appeal there. Can't stress that enough. And then the other way, on the back end of, so let's say I'll call this bullet point number 5, you can always get an agent. Now, this I admittedly have zero experience in, but I've had a lot of professors and a lot of like seniors to me that lived and swore by getting an art agent, right? And for those of you that don't know, that means, okay, you go through some sort of agency. Again, you'd have to look up some specifics on where they are. where they're located and what they're looking for. But basically, right, this person takes all your info, your credentials, and they go out and pitch your work to these recruiters, to these companies. They'll get you hired, and then they'll take a cut of some of that fee. Usually it's not like longer contract work. It's probably like smaller freelance gigs, and they'll take some kind of cut just for getting you the work. So like, okay, you're going to get like 70 or 30, maybe in worst cases, it might go as high as 40% of the cut. But again, you don't have to do anything except for sit there, make your work. You don't have to be business savvy. Maybe you just make a resume and that's it. So some people, and again, some of my old professors and senior illustrators absolutely love them. They loved not having to worry about things. They'll gladly take a pay cut just to do them. And that's fine, right? So again, that's really the extent. I never got one. I've always kind of like knew potentially it's an option if I'm really struggling or getting frustrated with things, but it's out there. Probably not quite as common these days. I'm sure like in the 80s and 90s, again, when my seniors were really in the heyday of their fields, that was probably the gold standard. But yeah, with the internet and the way everything is now, probably not quite as potent of a strategy. And of course, there's number 6, just being present online in general. So again, constantly checking sites like ArtStation and LinkedIn, maybe even Twitter has some of this stuff. They're constantly, I get emails from ArtStation every week. New job openings, new job postings, this, that. Being in communities in general. So like Clint Cleary's Swatches group, Adam Duff's Lucid Pixel group, my own Brush Sauce, both in the paid Patreon one and maybe even in the free one that, of course, all of this will be linked below. But like I know I've dropped several direct links to jobs and people looking to hire artists in my own Patreon Discord group as well. Like I can't, there's a surplus of work. I don't have many hours to take all these jobs, so I just, hey, if anyone's looking, here's a link, feel free to send this person your work. They'll see if you're a good fit, and jump started some careers that way. But again, you have to be actively looking, and you have to kind of put yourself essentially in the right places for these opportunities. Very rarely in opportunities it's gonna fall out of the sky, land on your doorstep without you having to put yourself out there or to put up a really good body of work that does most of the heavy lifting for you. And like I kind of mentioned earlier, you can meet with art directors at conventions directly. That is so important, as I said, putting a face to your work and be that work in front of the people that needs to see it. That's what it comes to for most of it. I know so many talented artists out there that are, again, actively looking for jobs, but for a lot of them, and most of them are people that either come through my programs or taken some of my courses that I could see them grow, they develop, and I'm like, yeah, your work is literally good enough. It's literally on par with a lot of professional stuff I see. You just need to get your work in front of the right person, or the timing and stuff. Like you need to have the right, or I need to have the right opening on something on my end. I can put them through the right channel. So it's timing, it's opportunity, and again, creating as much of that potential for yourself as you possibly can. And it's not just about, hey, I meet you, we had a great conversation. Again, it's social skills. You got to work on your social skills, guys. Something I'm sure 2020 has decimated on a lot of us. But you got to follow up. You have to follow up with these things. And I don't mean like, hey, next week after you meet a person, maybe a month or two, depending on what you guys talked about, but send them a courtesy email. Ask them how things are going. Tell them what you've been up to. Just, a follow-up by standard means is a really good way to keep up that snowball in terms of getting you and your work in front of the right avenues. But yeah, as the last one, number 8 here, just put your work out there. Again, you could be the most talented individual in some kind of field, but if nobody knows you exist because you just draw things and then delete them, or if you draw things and stick them on a hard drive, never to share, never to talk about with anyone, no one's going to know you exist, which defeats the purpose. So, because social media, accounts are free there, and I know there's a lot of problems with them in their own right, but it's a free way to get your work out there. And honestly, in my opinion, it'd be foolish not to have accounts and try to utilize them as much as possible. There's art groups and Facebook channels. There's, of course, Twitter. There's Instagram. There's LinkedIn. Did I miss some? I probably missed some, but YouTube, make YouTube videos, right? There's so many ways for you to just toss your work out into that void. And you got to keep tossing it out to see what sticks. If you make a really good piece, you put it in an art group on, like, let's say Facebook, that's got like 150,000 members, and you get like 35 or 50 shares. That's, again, people redistributing your art for you. People need to know you exist. And like I said, a lot of the most common reason people don't start businesses is because you need those two things, and a lot of people don't have those two things, and that's a product and an audience, right? Like a customer base. But when you're creating art and you're creating your assets, whatever that may be, whether it's 3D assets, 2D assets, portraits, landscapes, environment designs, color key art, whatever, comic panels, if you're putting your art out there enough, you're creating your product automatically, and if that product is good, it'll start to get you an audience, which solves both problems. So just put it out there. Be brave, everybody. Just produce the work, put it out there, and take criticism too. If it's from a person you like, admire, or trust, and they can kind of back up their words, in their own way, take that criticism and embrace it. But obviously, you don't want to just put your artwork on these sites and take every bit of criticism from all these. I've seen people are ruthless out there. You definitely need a thick skin, in today's online, kind of networks and social circles for that. Like if you're just blindly just putting work out there, hey, does anyone have any feedback? I don't necessarily recommend that. Get into closed groups that I've mentioned previously, where people are a little more apt to be trustworthy and genuine and just not looking to slam people's skills. That will be very demoralizing. So don't do that. So again, I think a lot of these things you can do to really build and maintain a sustainable career, for 10 years, 15, 20 years, maybe even longer. Like Sid Mead, work 40 or 50 years. Establish your contacts. Stay on top of current trends too, like what type of art is doing well, what is being popular, what's marketable. That doesn't hurt at all. Master one thing. Be so good at one thing that people are tossing money at you and want to hire you for this. And of course, you have to be nice at the end of the day. Don't be a dick. Don't be a dick, guys. Be kind. Be generous. And I think in terms of more like along the lines of sustainability for us artists and creators, multiple sources of income does not hurt. And that's why I do the mentorships, the school teachings, the freelance work, the patrons. I try to get as many logs on that fire as possible. So if one of them collapsed or disappeared, or I got fired or something terrible, I have the other aspects of the art business machine to keep me afloat. That's sustainability. And of course, if you can stay up to date, on current techniques and software, that's always a bonus. There's always something. And that's why I'm learning this today, right? You guys seen my work on this channel. You've probably seen my ArtStation or Instagram. I like coloring bright and colorful things. I'm trying to grow and stay on top of current techniques by doing something that's figure based, that's dark and and alien and 3D, like so technical. This is so far out of my comfort zone, but it's how I grow and build and sustain. So guys, I hope you were able to take something away from this video. Let me know if you have any questions, of course, below. I have links for everything I mentioned as well. And you guys take care. I hope to be back on sooner than later.